In the heart of Ajegunle, Lagos, a place where dust never settles and dreams often drown, lived Adanna Okafor, a 24-year-old woman burdened far beyond her age. Life had given her no choice. At just 12, her parents had died in a tragic bus accident on their way back from a village festival in Imo State. The news shattered her world. From that day, Adanna became a mother, father, and protector to her younger siblings, Chimamanda, who was just 4 then, and Obinna, a barely 2-year-old toddler. The streets of Ajegunle knew her face, stained with sweat and determination. She had sold bread under the scorching sun, hawked pure water, and even washed clothes for neighbors, until an old mason taught her how to carry blocks and mix cement on construction sites. Her back ached, her hands blistered, but her dignity remained intact. Each morning, before the sun painted the sky, Adanna would tie her colorful Ankara headscarf, wear her tattered boots, and walk past the noisy Danfo buses and rusty Kiki Napeps towards the construction site in Victoria Island. She pushed heavy wheelbarrows, carried concrete blocks on her head, and mixed sand with cement under Lagos's unforgiving sun. But in the quiet moments when the foreman wasn't barking orders, Adanna would steal a glance at the sky and whisper, "One day, just one day, this will all change." She believed, despite everything, that life still held something better for her, for Chimamanda, who dreamt of going to university, and for Obinna, who loved fixing broken radios. Meanwhile, across the city in Lekki Phase 1, another world thrived, a world of wealth, power, and silence. Chuka Obi, 32, was the epitome of Lagos's elite. Tall, dark-skinned, always dressed in simple polos and jeans, he was the founder of Obi Holdings, a real estate empire spanning Nigeria and the United States. His face was familiar on magazine covers, but his heart was a fortress few could enter. Despite the luxury, Chuka lived a life of detachment. Parties bored him. Clubhouses disgusted him. His mother, before passing, had always told him, "True wealth is how you treat the smallest of people." He carried that wisdom in his heart, yet something was missing. Love. Not the kind laced with greed, but one steeped in sincerity. He watched women parade themselves in designer clothes, with painted smiles and hollow intentions. None of them could fill the void. Chuka would tell his confidant, "I'll wait. I want a woman who sees me, not my pocket. Someone who knows what pain feels like and still chooses kindness." Little did he know, fate was already weaving the threads of a connection deeper than either could imagine. And it all began on a random morning, with no warning, no grand announcement, just ordinary steps of two very different souls about to collide. In Ajegunle, as Adanna wiped sweat from her brow, she couldn't have imagined that the change she prayed for was already set in motion. Somewhere in Apapa, a billionaire named Chuka would soon lose something very important, something that would unknowingly bring him to her world. And so the stage was set. On a bright but humid morning, Chuka Obi stirred in his pristine Lekki Phase 1 apartment. He didn't feel like the billionaire the newspapers described. He wanted no business meetings, no loud entourages, just a simple day to himself. Pulling on a plain green polo, faded jeans, and a face cap, Chuka stepped into his black Range Rover. Today was for breathing. He planned to check a parcel of land in Victoria Island before grabbing supplies from Balogun supermarket in Apapa. He parked inconspicuously, blending with regular Lagosians. As he stepped into the supermarket, he grabbed essentials, bottled water, toothpaste, biscuits, and chocolate. The cashier recognized him faintly, but Chuka's humility made him unassuming. After paying, he slid his black wallet, thick with dollar bills, credit cards, and crucial ID cards, into his back pocket. As he crossed the parking lot, something slipped. A simple accident. His wallet tumbled to the dusty floor without his notice. Meanwhile, miles away in Ajegunle, Adanna Okafor had woken up weak. She hadn't eaten much the night before, but needed strength for work. She decided to pass by Balogun supermarket, using her little savings to buy a Lacasera soft drink and a small biscuit to stave off her hunger. As she exited, her eyes caught a glint in the dust beside the parked cars. A wallet. She looked around. No one seemed to be searching for anything. Picking it up, She felt its weight. Her heart raced when she opened it. Foreign currency, business cards, IDs, more money than she had ever seen in one place. She could have pocketed it. Her siblings needed food. The landlord was on her neck for rent. Yet her conscience screamed louder. She flipped through the cards. There was no Nigerian number. The foreign contact didn't connect. She was stuck. After a moment of contemplation, she marched back into the supermarket. "Excuse me, madam, I found this wallet outside in the parking lot." The cashier's eyes widened. She called for the head of security, a tall man with the name tag Mr. Amos. Adanna handed the wallet over, explaining where she found it. Mr. Amos and the cashier exchanged surprised looks. It was rare in Lagos for such honesty to surface. "You're a rare person, sister," the cashier said, admiration in her eyes. Adanna only smiled faintly, nodded, and walked out, her slippers scraping against the tiled floor. Hours later at a petrol station, Chuka reached for his back pocket to pay and froze. His wallet was gone. Frantic, he raced back to the supermarket, the weight of loss pressing down on him. Approaching the cashier, his voice was tense. "I was here earlier. I think I lost my wallet. Did anyone bring it in?" The cashier smiled, remembering the quiet woman with the scarf. "A lady found it. She gave it to our security. Nothing was touched." Relief flooded Chuka's face as the wallet was retrieved and verified. Everything was intact. He scribbled his phone number on a piece of paper, handing it to the cashier. "If that lady returns, please give this to her. I want to thank her personally." As Chuka walked back to his SUV, he looked around one last time, hoping to catch a glimpse of the woman who had proven that honesty still lived in Lagos. But the parking lot remained ordinary, no sign of her. Back in Ajegunle, Adanna returned home, exhausted, unaware that her simple choice had set an unseen connection in motion. A billionaire, restless with gratitude, and a poor girl with dust on her hands, but gold in her heart. 3 weeks passed in the dense, chaotic rhythm of Ajegunle. Adanna Okafor thought nothing more of the wallet. Life had returned to its grind, waking at dawn, hustling for labor on construction sites and ensuring her siblings, Chimamanda and Obinna, ate at least once daily. But one humid afternoon, she returned to Balogun's supermarket. She had scraped together a little money from site work to buy gari, sugar, and toiletries. As she entered, a familiar voice called out, "Sister! Sister! Wait!" It was the cashier, smiling widely, waving a small folded paper. "You're the lady who returned that black wallet, right?" The man came back and left his number. "He asked that I give you this if I ever saw you again." Adanna blinked in surprise, her heart suddenly lighter. She accepted the folded paper with a nod of thanks. On it was a phone number, neatly written. She traced the digits with her eyes, not fully understanding why her hands trembled. "Please call him," the cashier urged. "He really wanted to see you. He was serious about it." Adanna smiled faintly. "Thank you. I'll call." She tucked the paper into her nylon shopping bag, careful but distracted. On her way home, she thought about it. The man must be wealthy, given the wallet's content. But she never returned it, expecting a reward. Still, a small hope stirred. Maybe this was a doorway to something new. Back home, her sister Chimamanda helped unpack the groceries, neatly folding the bags for reuse. As dust settled, Adanna planned to call the next morning, after chores. But fate played another trick. That night, Chimamanda, while cleaning the small one-room apartment, gathered used papers and bags. She bundled them up and disposed of them in the large green waste bin down the street, unknowing that within those bags lay the number that could change their lives. Morning came. Adanna searched her handbag for the folded paper, but it was missing. She dashed to the bags. Gone. She ran barefoot to the waste bin, praying it was still there. But the bin had already been emptied by the waste collectors. Her heart sank. She sat on the pavement, staring into the empty bin, the Lagos morning noise swirling around her. Tears gathered, but she wiped them away, whispering, "If it is meant to be, it will happen again." Yet deep inside, her spirit was crushed. She thought of going back to the supermarket to ask for the number again. But pride held her back. She didn't want to seem desperate, like another Lagos girl chasing a wealthy man. And so she returned to her daily toil, carrying blocks, mixing cement, washing clothes at night, all while the thought of the unknown man whose number she lost lingered in her mind like an unfinished sentence. Somewhere in Lekki, Chuka Obi was beginning to doubt he'd ever hear from the mystery woman. He often stared at his phone, hoping it would light up with a call or a text from an unfamiliar number, but it remained silent. In two distant corners of Lagos, one in a mansion, the other in a crumbling room, their hearts waited, unknowing that fate was still weaving, still planning, still waiting for the perfect collision of their worlds. 2 weeks drifted by, heavy with monotony. Adanna Okafor pushed her body through the rigors of construction work under the fierce Lagos sun. The pain in her shoulders became routine, the dust in her lungs familiar. But inside that fleeting hope, the possibility of something different still flickered, faint but stubborn. Then one Saturday morning, fate whispered through a neighbor's knock. "Adanna, they're sharing food and books at the local government secretariat today. Some big company sponsoring it. Bring Chimamanda and Obina. It's free." For a woman like Adanna, whose home often echoed with the question of the next meal, it was an opportunity not to miss. She wiped the cement stains from her face, tied her best Ankara scarf, and led her siblings through the maze of Ajegunle to the local government field. The place buzzed with life, children laughing, mothers carrying bowls, volunteers in branded t-shirts moving briskly. The banners read, "Obi Holdings Community Outreach, Feeding Tomorrow Today." Adanna collected a pack of rice, tomato paste, and a small tin of milk. Just as she turned to leave, a familiar face caught her attention near the refreshment stand. It was the cashier from Balogun Supermarket, serving juice. Their eyes met, and the cashier's face lit up. You're the girl who returned the wallet, right?" she exclaimed, stepping forward. "Yes, Ma," Adanna replied, a little shy, "but I lost the number you gave me. I wanted to call, but—" The cashier smiled knowingly. She leaned closer and whispered, "The man is here. He's the sponsor of this event. That's his black SUV parked there." She pointed to a quiet corner of the field. Adanna's heart skipped. She froze, staring at the SUV, her chest tight. "Let me go and tell him you're here," the cashier offered excitedly. "No, please don't," Adanna protested gently, her pride and uncertainty tangling within her. She didn't want to appear like she was chasing wealth. But the cashier was already on her way, her steps light and eager. Adanna stood still, her heart pounding as her eyes locked on the SUV. Then the door opened, and there he was, Chuka Obi himself, tall, composed, dressed simply in a white polo and dark jeans. His gaze followed the cashier's gesture, and then his eyes found her. He walked towards her, unhurried but purposeful. Every step made Adanna's heart thump louder. "I finally meet you," he said, his voice calm and sincere. "Good afternoon, sir," Adanna replied softly, her voice steady despite her nerves. "What's your name?" Chuka asked. "Adanna, sir." He smiled, shaking his head lightly. "You have no idea how long I've waited to find you. I left my number, but—" She looked down. "I lost it, sir. I didn't mean to. It was a mistake. Maybe it was all meant to be. Maybe we were meant to meet here instead." His eyes held hers gently. "Please, give me your number again." Adanna hesitated, then carefully typed her number into his phone. Chuka immediately dialed it, giving her a missed call so she could save his contact. "Please call me when you get home," he said warmly. Before she could respond, Chuka reached into his SUV, pulling out a small brown envelope. "Use this for your groceries. It's a little thank you for your honesty." Adanna's eyes filled with gratitude. She pressed the envelope to her chest. "Thank you, sir. God bless you." "We'll talk soon," he assured her, with a smile before walking back to the event organizers. Adanna watched him disappear into the crowd, her heart light, her mind racing. She had never imagined her act of honesty would bring her face to face with a man whose world was galaxies away from hers. With a skip in her step, she walked to the bus stop, clutching her siblings' hands, the envelope, in the hope of a phone call that could change her life. Yet destiny wasn't finished playing its tricks. Not yet. The journey home from the local government secretariat was vibrant with Lagos energy. Honking Danfo buses, loud street vendors, and bodies moving like waves in a restless sea. But Adanna Okafor's heart was quieter than ever, filled with warmth from her encounter with Chuka Obi. She and her siblings, Chimamanda and Obinna, squeezed into a crowded yellow bus, their newly received groceries pressed tightly against them. Adanna sat at the back, her handbag safely on her lap, her phone resting atop it. She couldn't wait to call Chuka and say thank you properly. As the bus reached her stop, the conductor's impatient voice rang out. "Madam, oh yeah, drop money. Next stop, de closo." In the scramble, Adanna hurriedly fished for her crumpled Naira notes, sliding her phone onto her lap to make space in her bag. She handed the driver the fare, grabbed her shopping bags, and, in the hustle, stepped down from the bus, forgetting the one thing she'd set on her lap, her phone. The bus sputtered forward, merging into traffic, while Adanna and her siblings made their way home, oblivious to the phone rolling onto the dusty bus floor, unnoticed by all. At home, Adanna unpacked their items, her mind replaying Chuka's smile, his voice. Then instinctively, she reached into her handbag to call him. Nothing. Her heart dropped. She rummaged frantically. Still nothing. A cold realization gripped her. She had left her phone on the bus. She stood motionless in their dimly lit room, the noise of the street muffled by despair. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just whispered, "God, please. Why now?" Across the city in Lekki Phase 1, Chuka's evening was restless. He smiled to himself, thinking of Adanna's soft voice and bright eyes. He picked up his phone and dialed the number she had given him, but the call went straight to voicemail. "Maybe her battery is dead," he muttered. He tried again. The same result. For hours, Chuka waited, the phone by his side, expecting it to light up. By morning, still nothing. Concerned, he dressed simply, got into his black SUV and drove to Balagan supermarket. "Do you know where she lives?" he asked the cashier. She shook her head sadly. "No, sir. She never told us. She just shops and leaves." Chuka left disappointed. His heart was uneasy, not just because he wanted to thank her, but because something about her stirred an unfamiliar longing in his chest. He drove back home, his mind filled with questions. Did she block me? Did something happen? 2 days later, hoping for distraction, Chuka visited a distant relative near the outskirts of Lagos. On the quiet drive back, something by the roadside caught his eye. An elderly woman sitting by a tiny wooden stall, her head resting against a crumbling wall, bananas displayed on a weak table. He slowed down, squinting. His heart clenched. Her face was familiar. Chuka pulled over, stepped out, and walked slowly to her. "Mommy?" he called gently. She stirred awake, frightened. Then recognition flashed in her tired eyes. It was Mama Nkechi, the nanny who had cared for him as a child. "Ah, my son! Vincent! Benjamin's son!" she exclaimed, her voice thin but joyful. Chuka hugged her tenderly, his heart heavy with shame. His nanny, the woman who once fed and bathed him, was now destitute on the streets. He helped her into his car, driving her to his mansion. Fresh clothes, a hot meal, and a warm room awaited her. That night, as Mama Nkechi rested, Chuka sat in his living room, staring into space. He had found someone from his past in a state of disgrace, yet the woman who stirred his present, Adanna, was lost to him again. 2 women, 2 lost connections, and yet both filled his heart with a resolve. He would build a house for Mama Nkechi, and he would find Adanna, no matter how long it took. At dawn, Chuka Obi stood on the balcony of his Lekki Phase 1 mansion, watching the sunrise over the Lagos skyline. But even in its brilliance, his mind was heavy with thoughts of 2 women, the motherly figure from his past, Mama Nkechi, now broken by poverty, and the unknown present, Adanna Okafor, the honest woman who returned his wallet, but had vanished again. He made a decision. Picking up his phone, Chuka called his site engineer, a dependable man named Engineer Gibenga. "Good morning, sir." "Good morning, Benga. I want you to start work immediately on a 4-bedroom bungalow. Keep it simple, but strong and comfortable. It must be ready in 2 months." "That's tight, sir, but I'll make it happen." "Who is it for?" "A very special woman. Someone who deserves dignity, not pity." Within days, construction began on a quiet plot of land in Lekki Phase 1, just off a peaceful cul-de-sac. Brick by brick, workers laid the foundation, the walls slowly rising, a home of restoration for Mama Nkechi. Chuka visited the site often, watching the progress closely. But on one particular visit, as the midday sun bore down, something, or rather, someone, caught his eye. A young woman dressed in a faded brown t-shirt with a dust-stained Ankara headscarf walked past carrying a heavy concrete block on her head. Her steps were steady but weary, sweat streaming down her face, cement clinging to her dark, worn hands. Her face, Chuka squinted. His heart pounded. It was her. "Adanna," he called, his voice uncertain but hopeful. She paused. Slowly she turned, her eyes meeting his. Their gazes locked. In that instant, the world around them blurred. The shouting foreman, the clanging of metal, the dust swirling in the air. It all faded. "Sir," she said softly, disbelief washing over her. Chuka stepped closer, his eyes filled with both relief and curiosity. "It's really you. I've been trying to reach you. I called the number you gave me, but it was switched off." Adanna's lips parted, but no words came. She swallowed, her pride wrestling with her exhaustion. She had wanted to call, she had wanted to explain, but her poverty had robbed her of even that chance. Chuka's gaze drifted over her clothes, her hardened hands, the streak of cement across her cheek. It humbled him deeply. "You returned my wallet without knowing who I was. You never asked for a reward, and yet here you are, carrying blocks to survive." His voice cracked with quiet admiration. "Adanna, you're extraordinary." She looked down, shame flushing her cheeks. "I lost the phone on my way home. I wanted to call, but I had no money for another phone. I didn't know how to find you." Chuka shook his head slowly. "You don't owe me an explanation, but I won't stand here and watch you carry another block. Not today. Not anymore." Adanna stared at him, confused, unsure if her ears heard right. Then his voice firmed, but his eyes remained gentle. "Drop that block. Come with me." A long silence hung between them. The other laborers watched curiously from afar, whispering. But at that moment, nothing else mattered. Adanna's fingers trembled around the rough edges of the block. She looked into his eyes, deep, kind, and unflinching. In them, she saw a promise she never dared to dream of. With a quiet exhale, she gently lowered the block to the ground. Her life was about to change, but she couldn't yet imagine how. Adanna Okafor stood frozen as the block touched the dusty earth. Her heart beat louder than the noise of the construction site. She stared at Chuka Obi, wondering if this was another fleeting kindness or the start of something real. Chuka stepped closer. "You deserve better than this, Adanna. I don't know how yet, but I want to help you. Help your siblings, too." For the first time in years, tears gathered in Adanna's eyes, not from pain or exhaustion, but from being truly seen. "But sir, why? Why me?" she asked. Chuka's voice was steady. "Because your honesty did what billions couldn't do. It woke me up. You returned a wallet that could have fed you and your family for months. That kind of heart? It's priceless." Without fanfare, Chuka led her to his black SUV. As the vehicle pulled away from the site, Adanna sat in stunned silence, the dust of the construction yard still on her skin, but a strange, unfamiliar peace rising in her chest. They drove to Lekki Phase 1, where his mansion stood like a quiet fortress. Inside, she was offered water, food, and a clean space to rest, a world away from her cramped room in Ajegunle. Later that evening, Chuka introduced her to Mama Nkechi, his former nanny, now refreshed and settled in a warm guest room. The old woman smiled warmly at Adanna, holding her hand. Your heart brought my son back to life, my dear. That night, Chuka shared his plans. I've started building a home for Mama and Kechi, but I want to do more. For you. Tell me your dreams, Adanna. What do you want for yourself? For your siblings? Adanna hesitated. She had never been asked that before. Chimamanda wants to go to the university. Obinna loves fixing radios. As for me, I just want to breathe without struggling. Chuka smiled. Then that's what we'll build together. In the weeks that followed, Adanna was given a fresh start. Chuka provided for her siblings. Chimamanda was enrolled in a preparatory school for university. Obinna apprenticed with a reputable mechanic in Surulere. Adanna herself started basic business classes, her first steps toward independence. But Chuka's admiration wasn't just charity, it was connection. Every time he saw her, dressed in clean clothes, her confidence slowly returning, he saw not just the woman who returned his wallet, but the woman who might return his heart to him. They spent quiet evenings together, sharing stories of pain, hope, and resilience. Adanna spoke of her parents, her struggles in Ajegunle. Chuka opened up about the loneliness wealth couldn't cure. One evening, on the balcony of his mansion, overlooking the Lekki nightlights, Chuka turned to her. You've given me more than I can ever repay, Adanna, but there's something I want to know. Would you allow me to walk this new journey with you? Not just as a helper, but as a partner? Adanna looked into his eyes, her heart thudding. There it was, the door to a life she'd never thought possible. A love born not from riches, but from respect, honesty, and quiet dignity. She smiled softly, her voice sure but tender. Let's build it together, slowly, brick by brick. And as they stood there, the city lights blinking in the distance, two worlds, once apart by poverty and privilege, merged under the weight of honesty. 3 years later, the once bustling Ajegunle streets that knew Adanna Okafor's struggle could barely recognize her now. She stood tall, graceful, her back straightened, not by privilege, but by dignity. Her hands that once carried blocks now signed checks, managed workers, and held microphones in halls she never thought she'd enter. Together with Chuka Obi, she co-founded the Okafor Obi Foundation, dedicated to transforming the lives of street children, widows, and hardworking laborers in Lagos. She became the face of resilience, a woman who showed that integrity is not just moral wealth, but a bridge to destiny. Her siblings flourished. Chimamanda, once the curious girl with a head full of books, was now a university graduate studying economics, with plans to start a scholarship fund for girls in underprivileged communities. Obinna, the boy fascinated with broken radios, now owned a thriving auto-electrical workshop in Surulere, training young boys from Ajegunle to build honest careers. Mama Nkechi lived in the house Chuka built for her, a peaceful bungalow surrounded by a small garden she tended with pride. She spent her days caring for neighborhood children and telling stories of how God never forgets his own. As for Chuka and Adanna, their bond deepened beyond gratitude into love, steady, unforced, and rooted in respect. They married in a quiet but beautiful ceremony, not surrounded by the pomp of Lagos high society, but by the people who truly mattered, family, workers, friends from the streets, and the lives they had touched together. On the evening of their third anniversary, Chuka stood with Adanna on the balcony of their home in Lekki Phase 1, the city lights winking like old friends. He held her hand gently, just as he did that first day on the construction site. You know, I searched the world for wealth, but I never knew my greatest treasure was in the dust of Ajegunle. Adanna smiled, her heart full. And I searched for survival, but I never knew survival wasn't enough until I met love. They stood there in silence, knowing that life hadn't just changed for them. It had bloomed, rooted in an honesty that once seemed ordinary, but had proven extraordinary. Together they had built more than a life, they built a legacy. And it all began with a lost wallet,